Hello, everyone. I'm Janine Donnelly, Manager of Webinars for Tech Channel, and I'd like to welcome you to our presentation. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You may ask a question at any time during the event by entering it into the Q&A panel. If you experience technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the Q&A panel to alert us, and someone will assist you. You may download a PDF version of the slide deck by clicking on the drop-down menu labeled Event Resources. You'll find that on the left side of your screen. And know that you can download those right from the platform without being disconnected from the webinar. Today's webinar, Accelerating CICS Modernization with APIs, is sponsored by HostBridge Technology. Our featured speaker today is Russ Teubner. Russ is CEO and co-founder of HostBridge Technology, a provider of CICS integration, modernization, and analytics software and services. His pioneering work in CICS integration includes bringing JavaScript to the mainframe and a U.S. patent pertaining to XML enablement of CICS applications. We're delighted to have you, Russ. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Janine, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today to make this presentation. We really appreciate it, and especially I really appreciate everyone in the audience carving out an hour or so to kind of track with us on this topic. Just looking at the audience, actually I can see that some of you are already our customers, and so thank you for being here today. Thank you for your confidence and your trust in us as a provider of technology to your organization, helping you move your mainframe modernization initiatives forward. We're going to cover a lot of topics today. I'm going to try to speak quickly and crisply, or at least as quickly and crisply as I can. But you'll notice that these topics are near and dear to my heart. We've been involved in helping organizations integrate their investments in System Z, apps, and data for a very long time. Now, as you could imagine, the bulk of our customers fall into those industries that are that have a strong affinity to System Z and CICS, such as banking, insurance, manufacturing, or logistics. But by no means is that does that certainly describe in total our customer base. We have a number of organizations in federal government, state government, both domestic as well as international. Our customers essentially range from, let's say, Thailand to the Middle East. So our focus, though, regardless of industry, regardless of geography, is helping organizations make their CICS apps and data available to whatever their hybrid or cloud environment looks like. Now, we will focus on our solutions today to a degree, but this is by no means some sort of a detailed product pitch or presentation. It's just to be able to paint the landscape and describe what we see our customers doing using APIs to accelerate their modernization projects. Our solutions, however, do fall into basically 2 or 3 buckets. One on the left is what we now refer to as integration analytics. This is the newest part of HostBridge technology. And honestly, it became a thing at HostBridge because of a phone call from a customer who called us and very eloquently stated a need, a problem they were trying to solve, but they didn't have the analytics data to help them meet that need and figure out the answer. And so we collaborated with them over the past few years to stand up a new product offering that we've called HTAC that helps organizations see kind of the end-to-end, we call hybrid application analytics. And of course, then we have kind of what we think of as our crown jewel, our integration software platform, HB.js. It runs on the mainframe under CICS and on the zip. Its focus is allowing organizations to simply and easily create APIs that encapsulate their legacy applications. And then we have a number of boutique products exemplified by the box on the right, such as our HostBridge socket support product. These have been developed to help very specific organizations who have a very targeted investment in certain technologies, such as sockets. There are a number of organizations who have very robust applications built around using CICS socket support, and we created HostBridge socket support to help those organizations save money on their mainframe. But let's pivot here. Let's talk about modernization. And just kind of rhetorically answer the question, who said this was easy? Apparently it's not, because when customers, virtually every survey that we see published by anyone, doesn't matter if it's a research publication, Google, Microsoft, whatever, the failure rate of modernization projects is really, really disturbing. Now, we see this, and in fact, after many modernization projects fail, our phone rings. We wish we were on the beginning end of some of our customers' journeys, not the tail end, but nonetheless, this is a problem. The fact that modernization projects are failing and failing in extremely expensive ways. This is a real concern. But underlying that are really a number of dilemmas in and around this whole mainframe modernization topic. Which approach do you use? We'll look at those in a second. What are the trade-offs that you're forced to make in terms of risk or timeframes or cost or complexity? And for that matter, where do you start? So many organizations that begin a mainframe modernization journey somewhat begin with the premise that to gain value, they need to boil the ocean. And our view is nothing could be further from the truth. And our analytic data proves it. But let's, first of all, use an outside objective source, Gartner, to really position this whole topic of mainframe modernization, and particularly around legacy systems. Gartner has done a really good job of kind of looking in the marketplace and kind of reducing all of the various options and alternatives to 7. Might be nice if there were like only 3 or 4, but the fact is, yeah, there really are about 7 that seem to bubble up. And what they've done is they've graded each of those on three categories: cost, agility, and risk. So on cost, from lowest to highest; agility, highest to lowest; risk, lowest to highest. Now, what you see here on the left is essentially their grade that they assign, or their assessment that they assign to each of those approaches. So, as an example, encapsulation. Their definition of that is leverage and extend the application running on the mainframe by encapsulating the data and its functionality around an API. Now, we put that in a big orange box there simply because that is our approach. And I guess we're also happy to say that, according to Gartner, it has the lowest cost, the highest agility, and the lowest risk profile. Now, just to understand the way the chart works, go down to the bottom where you conceive of a complete elimination of the former application componentry and replace it with something else. Not to say that's bad, but it's just to say when you go into a project like this, you have to realize it does have the highest cost, it does have the lowest agility, according to Gartner, and it does have the highest risk. Now, the other thing I want to just say is that we do not, every customer that we're involved in is not just picking one of these and saying, okay, we're good, we're going to modernize and we're going to use number 1, encapsulation, or we're going to use number 4, refactoring, or number 7. No. What they say, what our customers do is they use our technology to encapsulate, and we'll talk about this, they use that encapsulation around an API to create what we commonly refer to as a pivot point, a point where now they have options. And from there, they can either rehost, replatform, rebuild, replace, whatever, but they do it behind the API. So what I've said thus far is that we are an example of number one, where our technology allows organizations to encapsulate their existing CICS app and data functionality behind an API. And that, this whole presentation and the title of it, it kind of begs the question, okay, if acceleration is the objective, what's the solution? What are we trying, what's our point, what's our view? Well, our view is very clear. It's all about effective deployment of APIs on System Z. Now, we've been at this a long time, and to be sure, a decade ago, when I was giving presentations like this, I actually had to kind of describe what we meant by an API, what the value proposition was, how they work, how they can be used to organize resources and design around within the organization. Today, we're way beyond that. Now it's a given. No one, in fact, no one disagrees. It doesn't matter if you're Google, Amazon, Microsoft, any mainframe vendor, IBM, whatever, we all agree. APIs are a significant and critical key to helping organizations achieve modernization objectives and to accelerate that journey. APIs create reusable building blocks. They allow organizations to evolve. And that third bullet, again, I just want to camp on. This is what we see our customers doing. They are using our product to create APIs that give them the so-called pivot points. And by that, what we mean is, once they get the API stood up, they keep the API contract, or the way it works, the same, and they simply change how the API is fulfilled. So maybe on day one, the API is fulfilled by running a handful of CICS transactions and accessing some data off DB2. Great. But maybe that becomes a high-use API and the organization wants to refactor it. Or heck, maybe they want to rehost it. Maybe they want to actually move the app and data somewhere else. Well, the fact that they've stood up an API and created a neutral boundary, now that gives them that ability to pivot. They can keep the contract the same and change how the API is fulfilled. That's what we see our customers doing. Now, I wish I didn't have to put this slide in the deck, but I do and I will. I want to talk to it. Because as soon as we talk about APIs, we enter kind of a murky area, and that is, what do we mean? Because in some organizations, there are people who believe that, who might take the position that, well, maybe having an Excel spreadsheet use terminal emulation and screen scraping to interact with the mainframe application. They might refer to that as their, quote, API. Well, we would adamantly disagree. Terminal emulation and screen scraping in 2022 is not the way, it's not anyone's idea of effective integration. And it certainly does not meet muster as to even being an API. Besides the fact that it's the most brittle form of integration one could conceive of and carries with it the highest possible overhead. So if it's not that, what is it? Well, over the last decade, we saw a lot of organizations create what we now would refer to as a technology API. They had a COBOL program, or a VSAM file, or a DB2 table, and they created an API around just that one artifact. So they wrappered specific apps or data. Well, the problem is that there's usually, what would you say? There's a misfit. There's a disconnection between usually what one artifact does and what an API contract must fulfill. Now, if you happen to be the lucky person or the lucky organization who happened to write a COBOL program that, if you put an API around it, meets the modern functional requirements of an API that your business people require, you are very lucky and you are the unicorn. That's not par for the course. That's not what's typical. So what we're seeing is that organizations over the last decade, they cut their API teeth around creating these very implementation-specific, technology-specific APIs. But now, where they are today in their journey is they're wanting to stand up what we would call more business-level or business-oriented APIs. So instead of the API being invoke COBOL program ABC, the API is really invoking a function such as get customer account summary. Well, to do that, you might need to be able to, or you might need to touch a number of transactions, a number of programs, multiple data elements in various DB2 tables to really achieve a business or to fulfill a business level API. So we'll talk more about that in a second, but I just want to say when we talk about modernizing with APIs, there are many options and there are also many pitfalls. And we believe fervently that at this point in time, organizations should be building an API strategy to achieve modernization around the creation of higher level or business level APIs. Now, with that as background, let me just camp on, again, this idea of a pivot point. Because this is, I mean, I wish I just invented this whole thing, but frankly, this is what we see our customers doing. And this is their vocabulary. What they're doing is they are creating business level APIs to create loose coupling across systems. So all of those things on the left in their organization, in their hybrid cloud world, whether they're written in JavaScript or C# or they're running in the AWS cloud or written in Java, or maybe they're coming at the mainframe from an RPA platform or a low-code, no-code platform, whatever it may be. They have all of those componentries outside the mainframe interacting with mainframe components comprised of COBOL, DB2, vSAM, screen transactions across an API implemented using HB.js. And their experience is that this is simple, accessible, fast, secure, and very low risk. Now, let me go to a next slide, because I want to just unwrap our perspective. I mean, this is really the three dynamics that we see occurring in our customer base, and they are the dynamics that are shaping our product offerings. So that orange box at the top, we need to talk about, and that is that APIs are moving to be more business-oriented and top-down, period. I mean, the last decade, as we observed, organizations were standing up very technology-specific APIs, APIs that took on the characteristic, the attributes of the current program or data source that fulfilled the API. But now APIs are clearly becoming business-oriented and top-down. That changes a lot of things. Specifically, the box in the lower right, what it means is that we need some mechanism, or actually, let's look at the one on the lower left. To create a business API, what that means is you have to have some capability to orchestrate multiple CICS, apps, and data. In other words, if the API says get customer overview, then how do you do that? Well, at most organizations, there's not a single program, not a single table, not a single transaction that gives that complete synopsis of a customer. So they need something that orchestrates a few different assets. They might need to go to multiple DB2 tables, run a few COM area programs, or maybe even go to a couple of terminal-oriented transactions. And then the sum total of those activities will be amalgamated or combined, and that becomes the output from the API request. So we know that business APIs drive the need for orchestration. Well, now we're in the box on the lower right, which is, okay, great, let's talk about orchestration. Now, you have essentially two choices when it comes to orchestrating CICS, apps, and data. You can do it off the platform, or you can do it on the platform. We believe that the data is strongly states, and customer experience states that doing that orchestration on the platform is clearly the most efficient. Because if you do it off the platform, what happens is you begin flooding the mainframe with all sorts of discrete requests. That drives the operational load of the mainframe up. And the orchestration can never occur any faster than the speed of the communication links between what's driving the orchestration and the mainframe. We have one customer, for example, who their servers are in a big server farm in Chicago. Their mainframe is in Dallas, and they do a lot of orchestration running on their servers of their mainframe in Dallas. Well, guess what is monopolizing that 1 gig communications link? It's all of the chatter back and forth between the servers trying to automate very fine-grained apps and data running on the mainframe. So we have entire presentations on this topic, but let me just summarize by saying that orchestrating CICS, apps, and data on the platform is clearly the most efficient. And those three principles are what guide our design and our implementation around our platform called HB.js. HB.js runs on Z, under CICS, and on the zip. Thus, it has the most robust and least costly operational footprint that you could ever imagine running on the platform. And then once there, then it is then putting forward, or it is servicing API requests from whatever, from your enterprise automation platforms, from web apps, from mobile devices, from RPA platforms. Our customers, there's just not enough space on a slide to be able to document all the things that our customers drive their API requests to the mainframe from. Let me put a little meat on these bones, however. And this is by no means the only examples of how our technology could be used, but it tends to be an example that is easy to kind of grasp for purposes of a conversation like this. Let's imagine that there's an application running on the mainframe. And in fact, we're going to demonstrate it here in just a second. There's an application that IBM used to distribute with CICS called the Trader app. And it's a 3270, terminal-oriented application. And it's organized like many such applications. And that is, you go from one screen to another screen, to yet another screen, to drill down and get the data you want. And in fact, given the way they designed this app, and again, I'll point out, not dissimilar to the way these apps are typically designed by any customer, you have to navigate through many such screens to get all the data. And in fact, with this application, you would have to navigate through 16 screens to get the stock price for each of 4 companies. Now, if you orchestrated all that or tried to do it from outside the mainframe, you'd have to exchange 16 discrete requests and responses with CICS. And then whatever is on the outside would then have to screen scrape the screen information that goes back in the 3270 data stream. Neither of those are good things. So that's the before condition. In other words, that's what people do absent an API. But with an API, things are dramatically different. So using our product, they would simply bring up their development tool of choice, whether it's Eclipse or VS Code or whatever, and they would author a little segment of JavaScript, the most widely known programming syntax on planet Earth, at least at this point in history. And in fact, on the right is the actual JavaScript program that will gather all of that stock information. Now, this obviously isn't a technical presentation. We do plenty of those if you'd like to attend. But I will say this. If I understand right, Janine has set this up as a hyperlink. If you would like to, point your browser to that link there that says http://demo.hostbridge.com and just click it. If you click that link, as I'm doing right now, what you're going to get back, your browser is going to open up, and you're going to get back a JSON document. It's going to look something like what you see on the bottom part of this slide. And although I just clicked it and it came back, it's vertically oriented just because of the way I have Chrome set up. But you can see the data that came back. Now it's important to know that what just happened is that you sent a live API request to CICS running on our mainframe. It went to HB.js and it ran that little snippet of JavaScript on the zip engine. And then what that bit of JavaScript did was it orchestrated, it went through those transactions, grabbed the necessary information, formatted the JSON document, and returned it to your browser. And it did that in so fast you probably would have no idea of what happened on the back end. Now I might just throw in a brief comment here that said what we did on the back end was we still interacted with that same trader application. But please know that we did it without one drop of screen scraping. And that's because since we run under CICS, we are able to orchestrate and interact with BMS transactions, screen-oriented transactions, without the 3270 data stream ever having been created. So in other words, this particular script, if you look at it carefully, you'll notice that there are absolutely no references to screen geometry. Instead, there are references to field names. So without changing the underlying application one iota, in fact, it was not recompiled, not touched in any way, HB.js is able to orchestrate those transactions with zero screen scraping and at the speed of your mainframe, not the speed of your network. So I hope everyone has clicked on that link. If not, please do. But the bottom line is pretty simple. Our view is that modernizing with APIs is the key to accelerating your mainframe and particularly your CICS modernization journey. It's important to know that this approach does not require any change to your existing mainframe applications. It's easy to do and it's simple to use. Our customers are standing up entire catalogs of APIs in a matter of months. One of our customers, one of the largest healthcare claims processors in the country, stood up an entire catalog of 300 business-oriented APIs, and they did it in 12 months. Using any other technology, their time frame estimate was that it was going to take years. So just again to kind of maybe put a finer point on it, our API creation and enablement technology is what we call the HostBridge JavaScript engine. It runs on the mainframe under CICS, and this is the methodology and the platform to implement APIs and do orchestration on CICS. It supports any and all CICS-based application. In fact, I can say I don't know of any CICS-based app or data resource that we haven't supported or can't touch. It eliminates any and all screen scraping for BMS transactions. It is easy to create and deploy APIs. If you go to YouTube, in fact, I think there's a video that we created out there that shows how to deploy an honest-to-goodness mainframe API using HostBridge, and I think it took James Alexander on our team who recorded the video. I think it took him 30 seconds, maybe 60, I don't know. But it was seconds. That's the goal. We want to be able to stand up APIs in seconds and minutes. And maybe a real hard one takes a couple of hours. But that's the metric our customers want to achieve. Now, for those who are interested in the details, obviously, I've said this before, we run on CICS, or on the mainframe under CICS and zip enabled. But what HostBridge or HB.js is under the covers is sort of like the biggest, baddest server-side JavaScript on planet Earth. And it's 100% compliant with the JavaScript that your web developers are using today. In fact, because of that, some of our customers, the people who actually develop these sorts of integration, we call them integration scripts, the people who develop these JavaScript segments, some of them would not even know or recognize a mainframe if they were in the same room. That's acceleration. Now, I want to use this slide to make a point, and that is that when you use HB.js to stand up APIs around existing CICS apps and data, we really don't care what is sending those API requests to us. It could be RPA platforms, or more recently, a lot of our customers are evaluating low-code, no-code platforms, and they're finding they're becoming really interested in using HostBridge on the back end, or HB.js on the back end, to tee up and publish APIs, and then use a low-code, no-code platform like HCL's Volt MX to be able to create the front-of-glass experience on top of that API. Now, this is not a pitch about any particular low-code, no-code platform, but I will say that we've looked at a lot of them, and these platforms are becoming really, really powerful. And in fact, we think HCL's Volt MX is right up there with the cream of the crop, which is why why we build demonstrations around it. But again, anything that can send an HTTP request can drive a HostBridge API. So, and if I were to put this slide in very generic terms, I would say the combination of HB.js with a low-code, no-code platform like Volt MX is yielding amazing and accelerated benefits at our customers. The speed of delivery is amazing. The cost effectiveness of the whole development and deployment process, sometimes I don't even believe the metrics our customers give us relative to their old ways of doing it. It's so much more cost effective. And what they like about it is that they don't have to give up anything in terms of performance, because HostBridge is optimized for the CICS and the System Z environment. It's running on the zip, so the performance is guaranteed. Let me move on to just some experience in the field. I mean, I can sit here and give these presentations all day, every day, but frankly, the words of actual end users mean the most. So I'm certainly not going to read these, but if you would take the time to skim them, it'd be great. They all speak to what I think is one principle or one observation, and that is that customers are using this API modernization approach and using HB.js to dramatically accelerate their mainframe modernization initiatives. And they all come back with metrics. We stood up 40 services in 35 man days. We stood up all of these services, and it cut hours out of existing processes. I mean, we're working with a customer right now in the credit card fulfillment business, and it was taking them hours to approve a new application. And now re-engineering the process, the approval process, which is CICS based, using HB.js, they are now able to, they have moved that credit card authorization process from hours to minutes. And that creates real sustainable competitive advantage for this organization and puts money in their shareholders' pocket. That's the kind of value that we want to create with our customers. Now, there's lots of ways to learn more. Certainly, we've architected this slide deck and this presentation to allow plenty of time for questions, which we'll move to next. But there's a wealth of resources available. You can find them on our website. There are all sorts of ebooks. There are videos. There's things on YouTube. There are webinar recordings. And if you can't find something that really fits your requirements, call us. Let us know. I mean, we are here to serve you in your mainframe modernization journey. So please feel free to call Farrell Johnson or call me. I'm fair game too. So let us know. Whatever we can do to answer your questions and help accelerate your mainframe modernization journey for your CICS applications, we want to talk to you, and we'll help you any way we can. Janine, with that, I think I'm going to take a sip of water, take a breath, and let's move to some Q&A. Hopefully, this presentation has at least got the mental juices flowing, and we've got some questions out there.
We do have some questions. And before I kick off, Russ, I just want to remind those folks who joined late that you can download a PDF version of the slide deck. So check out Event Resources on the left there. Click on that drop-down menu, and you can download the deck right from the platform before we are done today. Okay, Russ, here we go. First question, we have ZOS Connect, which provides API capabilities. Can we do all these things you've discussed with ZOS Connect?
First of all, whoever wrote this question, thank you. Because we have a very close working relationship with the ZOS Connect folks. And why? It's because the answer to the question is no. ZOS Connect is a wonderful product, and it allows you to create an API on a single CICS artifact. So it is an example today of a product that lets you create a very technology-oriented API. It lets you put a great API. It's a great tool, but it lets you create an API around one program. So let's say you have a COBOL program and you want to create an API around it. That's great. ZOS Connect can do that. But remember, what ZOS Connect enforces is a one-to-one model. One API request invokes one activity on the mainframe. One COBOL program does one DB2 operation, does one MQ operation. But what if to fulfill the API, you need more than that. You need to run a terminal-oriented transaction, which ZOS Connect does not support. Or what if you need to run 3, 4, 5, 100 COM area programs to fulfill an API? Or what if you need to do kind of a hybrid case? Our customers, in order to fulfill a business-oriented API, frequently need to run a handful of programs, link to those programs. They need to run a couple of terminal-oriented transactions, perhaps to query something. They need to go over to DB2 and log something. That's a hybrid case. That's a one-to-many case. And in that situation, that is not what ZOS Connect does. And I'll let you fill in the mental. You can connect the dots as to why we might have a very good relationship with the ZOS Connect team, because they recognize that organizations, as APIs are becoming more business-oriented, more top-down, not bottoms-up, that organizations need orchestration. In fact, I had the privilege of speaking at an IBM conference late last year with Anthony Papageorgiou, the former ZOS Connect architect and product manager. And what we were doing was explaining to both of our customer sets and anyone at TechU to not think of these products as antithetical. Don't think of them as either or, because there are some excellent use cases and a growing number of use cases where to solve the business requirement, you're going to need both something like ZOS Connect, and you're going to need something like an orchestration engine like HB.js. Janine?
Very helpful. Thanks, Russ.
If there's another question on that, if anyone would like to dig in on that, I'd love to say more, but maybe we can move on.
All right. Next question is, are APIs still a good option if our plans are to migrate applications completely off the mainframe?
Yes, absolutely, unabashedly, yes. We have customers doing this today. Now, mind you, our code runs on the mainframe, but that doesn't mean that if you get us involved in a project, we're gonna try to do something contrary to your organization's or like that's somehow contrary to your strategy or tactics. We work with many organizations who are actively moving apps and data off the mainframe, or at least that's their stated intent. And what they do is they stand up the API, they fulfill the API using the existing artifacts, and then again they use the API as the pivot point. Once the API is stood up, then now they've decoupled the way in which the API is fulfilled from the end or from the applications that are consuming the API. And now that they're decoupled, they then can refactor the API. Maybe they do want to convert that COBOL code to Java, or maybe they do want to move that data off the mainframe into the Amazon cloud. Whatever they want to do is fine. So our point is that even if your strategy is to migrate apps and data off, APIs are still your best first stop in the modernization journey, because that's where you achieve the fundamental decoupling, and then you can, for lack of a better word, if you really want to move apps and data off the mainframe, now you can do that in a fashion that is decoupled from the organization that's consuming those APIs. And once you get the apps and data off, now all you have to do, as long as you've held the API contract constant, all you have to do is change where the API is fulfilled. Change the IP address, but keep the API boundary the same.
Great. Okay, next question. It's actually a twofold question. Two separate questions. How does licensing work? And then secondly, do you have any customers integrated between mainframe and public cloud? And if yes, what are the typical challenges noticed over on-premises deployment?
Those are both great questions. Janine, I was thinking about the second, and answered the second question already. Tell me the first question again.
How does the licensing work?
Oh, licensing. Well, it's running on the mainframe. What we typically are, we try to license it. We have a very flexible model. We try to license it based upon your business requirements. So we have some customers who are interested in an enterprise license. In other words, and that means that they will use HB.js as a strategic tool to create APIs around the full inventory of all applications on their mainframe. We have other customers who will say, no, I have 20 different applications, but I only want to start by building APIs around 3 of them, or 2 of them, or maybe even just 1 of them. I want to dip my toe in the water. Our approach to that is fine. We'll construct a license that is application specific, and then once you're happy with that, then hopefully you'll be so happy that you want to expand that license to encompass other applications. So all to say, it's a very flexible model. We keep it that way because we understand that every organization, all of our customers are at different places in their mainframe modernization journey, and so our licensing model needs to respect that. The second one was how we interact with public-private cloud. Well, first of all, our code is running on the mainframe now, and for some of our customers, that means it's running on premises, and to some of our customers, they think of their mainframe as already running in the cloud. So we already kind of have a vocabulary and a nomenclature challenge, because for many of our customers, the mainframe is an active part of their hybrid/cloud environment. However, I'm just going to imagine, for purposes of this question, that cloud is being used here as a placeholder for things not on the mainframe. And we've seen many customers approach this different ways. So they might actually drive an API request to a service deployed on AWS or a service deployed on Azure, and then a service there might drive another API request to us running on the mainframe. But we've also seen it the other way, and that is that once you drive a service request to HB.js running on the mainframe, yes, we can orchestrate any and every type of CICS artifact, but we can also send an HTTP request out of the mainframe. So we have customers who are building services that as they build that service, they not only use artifacts running on the mainframe, classic sort of artifacts running under CICS, but they also have the service send outbound HTTP requests to either on-premises or cloud-based services to grab data. So maybe, for example, a request comes in. I'm just kind of making up an example here. They go to DB2, they get some data, but let's imagine they're using a cloud-based data quality service. And so now before they render that data coming back as the API response, they want us to send an HTTP request over to a cloud-based service, run that through an address scrub or something like that, kind of a data quality scrub, bring that response back, have that augment then the response that goes back to the request that came to HB.js. I said a mouthful, and I wish I had a whiteboard with me, because if I did, what you'd see me draw is a diagram that shows kind of you can mix and match these things however you wish. So all of our customers are in some phase of a journey where they are kind of rebalancing and rethinking what apps and data live on the mainframe, off the mainframe, what apps and data live on-prem, off-prem. And so what you'd see is kind of a matrix where our customers are really kind of connecting the dots as they should be at any given point in time based upon their current deployment strategy.
Great. Okay, next one. if the CICS transaction is going to read DB2 data alone, IBM DB2 REST APIs are in the marketplace. So can we say HB.js can be used for other than DB2?
Well, that's an excellent observation. That yes, there are REST APIs, and DB2 supports that. But again, with all due respect to that capability, I would say that customers who are doing that are in fact using a pretty much of a technology-oriented API, right? So yes, does DB2 offer the ability to be able to fire in REST APIs to go into DB2 and do a query and bring back a result set? Absolutely. And if that's all you need, fine. But what our customers are typically trying to do is to do more than that. So they might send a request to HB.js, and we might do some degree of orchestration, and it might involve multiple DB2 operations, not only on the read side, on the write side, and yes, they might touch some sort of a CICS artifact. So I guess a fair and balanced answer to the question is if the sum total of what you want to achieve in the service or the API can be fashioned as a DB2 stored procedure, and you can do everything there, then yeah, that's a great alternative. But to the degree that you want to be able to embrace programmatic or data artifacts that live in a domain other than DB2, then HB.js is probably the right launching point for that API.
Got it. Okay, next question. How does such a technology stack work with a microservices architecture?
Well, I think that great question. By the way, this is a fantastic group, attendee group, Janine. These are great questions. The first thing that what I'd have to do is just clarify the term microservices, because to a technologist, and I kind of count myself as one, that means something very specific. To many of our customers who are thinking of microservices in a more business-oriented fashion, it doesn't mean quite the same thing to them. So many of our customers view our approach of API creation and deployment as perfectly consistent with their microservice deployment architecture. Now, and I say that despite the fact that to many, in order to be, quote, a microservice, you need to buy into an entire technology stack, a containerized technology stack. Now, clearly, I haven't discussed anything with respect to the containerization of an HB.js script. But so I can't. So since I don't know who asked the question, and I don't know the background from where it came, what I'd say is our customers who are full throttle moving toward the deployment of a microservices architecture view this approach as fully compliant with at least the spirit of that objective, if not the technology letter of the law. In other words, I did not describe anything here about deploying the API in a Kubernetes container. Well, I may in another year or two, as the containerization architecture evolves and matures on the mainframe, which IBM has already announced that it will. So, but today, what our customers seem to be saying, at least by virtue of their actions, is that they view this approach as fully compliant with their business objectives in and around their microservices initiative. And then as IBM embraces a more containerized environment under ZOS and in fact under CICS, you will see us marching right along in lockstep to where our artifacts and these APIs will be deployed as part of those containers.
Perfect. Another question. What are the performance considerations for using APIs in the way you've described? We might get mainframe speed, but do we pay more for the mainframe cycles this approach uses?
That's a great question. The answer is no. Now, and I didn't even qualify that no, which is very unlike me. The answer is no, provided you have a zip engine or available zip capacity. Every 100% of the integration layer, that bit of JavaScript code, is running on this so-called zip engine, which is a specialty engine running on the IBM Z platform, and any and all CPU cycles running on the zip are not subject to any IBM mainframe, or for that matter, third-party vendor software charges. So running HB.js on your mainframe does not elevate your IBM software bill one iota.
Perfect. All right. Seeing no more questions, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, but especially for your questions and participation. Added so much to our session today, so thank you. And I also want to thank you, Russ, for sharing your expertise with us today. Later this week, watch for a follow-up email. It will contain a link to the recording of today's webinar. Get all the latest on all things tech by going to techchannel.com/subscribe. That concludes our webinar. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.